Welcome back to Freedom Fridays, and thank you for tuning in again. We've been talking the last few weeks about how can we defend creationism scientifically. And the next question that we're going to take a look at is there evidence around the world for a global flood? Some have suggested that the global flood didn't happen globally, that it was regional, and that the historical biblical writers were writing about something that happened only in their region. Is there evidence for a global flood? And if you think about a global flood, what would you expect? When you see floods around, what would you expect? And when we look around the world, what we find is rock layers with fossils buried in them all around the globe. And some of them we find sea creature fossils, a fossil of a sea creature, all the way in every region, including at the top of Mount Everest. They've found fossils at the top of Mount Everest that are actually sea creatures. Well, how in the world, without a global flood, did that get up there? Well, obviously, there was a global flood then. And when we see around us, what other evidence do we see for a global flood? And for years and years, people have said that the Grand Canyon in the United States here is an example of millions and millions of years, and that the rock layers in the Grand Canyon were laid out over millions and millions and millions of years. And does that happen that way? Well, the evidence is now showing that no, it doesn't happen that way. Back in 1980, I believe that it was, Mount St. Helens erupted out west, and when Mount St. Helens erupted, the massive mud flows and lava flows created instant canyons 100 feet deep through some through soft dirt and soft sediment, and some of it right through rock, hundreds of feet deep. And they see this, and what do you see? Layers. It produced layers. Exactly what we would expect. And when you think about did the Grand Canyon get carved by a little bit of water over a long period of time, or a lot of water over a short period of time? That's the real question here. I don't know about you, but when we get a lot of rain, it does a lot of damage. We find a lot of erosion. We live not far from a river, and the riverbanks all get eroded when the water level is high, and there's a lot of rushing river and a lot of rushing water that tends to erode the bank away and cut into things. But the normal erosion that we find year after year is very minor in comparison to that. So the fact that we observe there would suggest to us that something to produce the magnitude of the Grand Canyon must be a massive flood of water flowing through there at phenomenal speeds to carve that canyon. Otherwise, why isn't the Mississippi River making a Grand Canyon right through the middle of the United States? It's a much larger river than the Colorado River, and apparently, according to evolutionists, it's been there just as long. Why would it not have created the same thing? It just doesn't make any sense. But yet, with a huge flood of water, we always find much greater erosions. And fossils. What about fossils? The evolutionists would say, well, fossils are produced over millions and millions of years, and you need water and time and pressure, and that's not really true. There are fossils where you find one fish eating another fish, and they were fossilized instantly in the middle of a meal. Well, how did that happen over millions and millions of years? It can't happen. There are also instances where we find hats that have been fossilized in a matter of just a short period of time. In New Zealand, there was a mine that collapsed, and because the mine collapsed, there was water that rushed in, and there was a lot of sediment and such, and one of the miners' hats got fossilized rapidly. So fossilization doesn't actually take a great period of time. It just takes water and pressure. Now, if you had a global flood, what would you expect? Well, obviously there's water, and there'd be a great deal of pressure with that amount of water over top of things. And so you find that the fossilization is actually evidence that there was a global flood. We also find that the ice age, the evidences that we've seen of an ice age, are not because of random slow processes, but because of the results of the global flood. The results of the global flood would have produced superheated gases in the air because of all the volcanic eruptions that would have happened, cataclysmic flood. And we also would have seen that as this flood receded, the colder regions would have frozen and the warmer regions would not have. And so we see that's how our glaciers got produced. And that's how the ice age was formed, was because of the global flood. So next question, did God really create the world in 6 literal days? Days like you and I would think of it, a 24-hour day. Did God really create the world in that? Couldn't it be longer days? I mean, 2 Peter 3:8 says that a day is as 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day, right? Actually, it doesn't. If we take a look at 2 Peter 3:8, and we'll deal with that first. 2 Peter 3:8 says, "But do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day." It doesn't say that a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day. It says with the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is just like a day. By the way, if you want to say that, well, it must have been 6,000 years or 6 million years because of this verse, then you have a problem, because it also goes the other way around. So your 50 million years could actually be 50 days. So it really doesn't say that anyway. What this verse is really trying to get to, and you look at it in its context, don't take anything out of its context. The context in verse 9, the Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness. The idea is God is timeless. God is outside of time. He created it, but he's outside of it. And so the idea here is that God is timeless. It's not trying to say, oh, how do you decode Genesis chapter 1? That's not the purpose in 2 Peter 3:8. That's not what he's talking about. He's not even talking about creation there. He's talking that God isn't slow and that God is timeless. And so let's also take a look at, in the Bible, if you have the Hebrew word for day, in the context, a day can mean a lot of different things. You could mean, in my day, we had, and that's a time period. If I say it's something happened in my day. Or it could be, I'm going to be here for 2 days. Well, that's a specific amount of time. So day can be, and we talk about the day of the Lord, and that's a thought of when the end times, and when that comes, the time of the return of God to this earth. And so day can mean a lot of things. And first of all, we don't take 2 Peter 3:8 and define the Hebrew word day in the Old Testament, because that's non-Hebrew. in 2 Peter 3:8. That's Greek. And so it's not to define a Hebrew term. And when we take a look in the Old Testament, when the word day is coupled with a number, 33 days, 40 days, 3 days, anytime there's a number with the word day, which is 410 times in the Old Testament, it always means our literal day, the day that we're talking about when we talk about the sun up, sundown, and all of 24 hours. That's always what it's talking about. Anytime the words evening and morning are coupled with the word day, which is 38 times, it always means a regular day. Anytime evening or morning are coupled with the word day, so you've got a day and evening or day and morning or anything like that, which is 23 times in the Old Testament, it always means a regular day. Anytime the word night is coupled with the word day, night and day, 52 times in the Old Testament, it always means a literal regular day. So when we look at Genesis chapter 1, the account of creation, what does it say? The account of creation every single day says, and there was evening, and there was morning the first day, Genesis 1:4. And we can go down, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day, verse 8. And there was evening, and there was morning the third day, verse 13. I could continue to go through all 6 days, and it talks about evening and morning, and that was that day. So why would we think it to be different here, but it's not different in the other 38 times in the Old Testament, excuse me. And it always talks about the first day, second day, third day. Why was it different here than the 410 times otherwise in the Old Testament? It just doesn't make sense. Also, if you take a look at the order, it doesn't make sense with evolution anyway. And then when you think about the purpose of the week, the structure of our week, 7 days, Sunday to Saturday, it is all based on creation. When you look at when our week was created, it's all based on creation. And you look at it, where did it start? It started with the 10 Commandments, the Sabbath day. And why would you keep the Sabbath day holy? Because God created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Now, if these days were actually millions of years, well, then you have to work for 6 million years and then you can rest for 7 million, or for 1 million, excuse me. It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. We're going to continue this discussion in a 4th session and next week. And thank you for tuning in to Freedom Fridays.